Welcome back to another TerranScapes video. This video is going to review the new ocean boards. If you saw my previous video a couple back where I was sort of trying to create some new surf, actually I decided to modify that quite a bit to bring it in, I think, a little bit more realistic and make it a little bit more manageable to create the waves. There are some issues that I am going to accept at this point in terms of styling of the boards, because I've spent a lot of time putting this technique together, and so at some point I've just got to move forward and accept some things. So I'll go over the boards, show you the things I think worked out well, some of the things that I think either can be improved or I'm sort of accepting at this point. So before you leave suggestions in the comments, just wait till the end so you can hear all of my rambling, and then if I miss something, let me know. And before we take a look at this, I just want to mention that I do have a Twitter account. It's Mike at TerranScapes, and I tweet once or twice a day, usually, with the sort of trials and tribulations of what's been going on in the studio. And also, I forget to mention, you may, if you have questions you can submit them to the question and answer segment. I've been doing videos with questions and answers, and I haven't done one in a while, and I think people don't submit questions because they don't know that that's a possibility. So if you're interested in having a question answered, you can submit that to TerranScapes@gmail.com. Put Q&A in the subject line, and once I get a few, I will shoot a question and answer video. It would be nice to have these questions come in that way. That way I can answer them for the general public, because I do get quite a few questions to my TerranScapes email, and I'm always happy to answer those questions. But I tend to get a few that are repetitive, and so it might be nice to sort of cover it for the whole community and maybe answer some questions that people haven't asked yet, but they would appreciate your question. So feel free to send those to TerranScapes@gmail.com, and I will make sure that I get them answered for you. So before I lose my train of thought, let's take a look at the ocean boards, and I'll show you them in some detail. So here you can see sort of a top view of the boards, and a couple of things just to mention here real quick is that things that I think worked out well is that I sort of designed them from a little bit of this kind of a vantage point, more of a gamer's view, although I'm a little bit further away here, of course. But what I was hoping to do was capture a little bit more transition of this green going into the ocean, and that worked out pretty well, and I think I can push that in a little bit more by carving the boards slightly differently when I do the next pair. So I really liked that. I did lower the waves, and we'll see those in more detail in a second, but I lowered them in height, broadened them, spaced them out a little bit more, so I think that worked out fairly well. I changed the seaweed, and I like the overall effect that that produced, so I feel like that was a positive. And I added in the rocks, and they have a sort of semi-submerged look, and that is really nice for the rock effect, particularly as it just adds a lot of interest to the overall board. A couple issues that you may see right away that some of them I can fix. One is the union between these two boards. The corner board needs to have a 45-degree angle to reduce the amount of angle conflict here and here, as well as, if you were to flip this board over, you'd have the same kind of angle conflict. I actually measured that out with a protractor to try to see, and it turns out a 45-degree angle is sort of the best option. Now, what that ended up doing, however, is you have these waves that are coming in at a fairly striking difference, and that I think I can ameliorate pretty well by taking this, instead of having these waves come in at this angle, is by just stretching them a little bit like this, and this one I can stretch a little bit like that, and then that wave difference will meet quite nicely. And here I would need to do the same thing. I got a little bit carried away bringing this in at an angle, although it does kind of match the overall wave pattern here. That probably could have been brought again like this, and that would help with the potential corner board joins should there be one here. Now, one issue that I made a mistake on, before people make suggestions, is that really behind the rocks, you wouldn't really quite have the same kind of wave structure, particularly here. When I have a lot of things on my mind as I've been working on these boards, and so that just was a little slip up. I mean, I don't think it's a catastrophic error for the boards, but it is something that I could probably easily fix next time I do it and give it just a little bit more realism there. I should just mention, I haven't added any foliage or vegetation, in these areas here, and I'll be adding that later once I get all of the ocean boards done, as it's just going to be a little easier to store the boards without any of this, so I can stack them relatively simply. So, with all of that said, let's take a much closer look at them, and you can see some of the details with a little bit better. So before we actually come on shore, so to speak, I wanted to point out that I did try to put in some vegetation under the water, and actually what I ended up doing was putting it too deep. There's actually a line that runs about this height, and I think I mentioned it in the previous video that I had to eyeball the depth because of the variation of the carving as it goes through, and obviously I put it a little bit too deep. So I'm going to be bringing this forward in future boards so it's a little bit more visible. This is about the most visible patch of the two boards, and I really like the look, actually, so I'll be working to improve that in the next few boards. You can also see here that I've changed the shape of the waves, and I've really knocked them down in height and given them sort of more of a small crashing effect. I did take a look at quite a few pictures and videos of different oceans, I should say, and there are quite a few examples of relatively small surf coming on shore, and I think this is a little bit more manageable for me as I'm trying to create the larger waves with the strong curl rolling over. Is really a challenge, and there's plenty of challenges for me on these boards without adding that. So I tried to simplify them a little bit, and I think actually it overall is either just as nice or nicer actually than the other effect I had. The other thing I tried to do is change and soften the amount of foam, if you will, the white water kind of breaking off from the waves, and I think that looks a lot more effective as well. One of the things I noticed is that the foam will actually be under the water sometimes, depending on how the turbulence is, and so what I've done is I've left some areas sort of covered over to give it some of that look, and we'll see a little bit more of that over on the rocks. So I wanted to give you a close-up of both the waves and the washed-up seaweed, and you can see I feel like I did a much better job pulling the foam back off the tops of the waves, giving it a little bit of the appearance that it's under the water, and I did get a little bit of a curl in some of the parts of the waves, but that wasn't really a big focus of mine. I tried as best I could, but really I'm looking for sort of a rolling surf in any case, so any sort of tumbling is that's just bonus, really. And then you can also see the seaweed here. Now this is silflor horsetail vegetation, and this is kind of it's I don't want to call it a puffy, but it's sort of a bristly vegetation, and I didn't want it sitting up above the shore. So what I did is I embedded it in the resin itself, let that set up a little bit, then I could push it down and give it a much flatter appearance. I really liked, though, that it has a little frondy. Can I use that as a word? I'm making that word up. It's a word now. Frondy look, which I think gives it a little bit more interest and a little bit more natural look. The other benefit to doing this is that it embeds it on the board very strongly. Previously, I had it up in the dry areas, the seaweed that I've been using, and it kind of would peel off much easier than I felt comfortable with. And so this is is going to give it, you know, a rock hard bond to the boards. It's not going to come off at all. So then I went back in and, you know, added a little bit of texture to these areas, put in a little bit more foam, and as the wave is sort of passing by, you know, dragging some of that foam off as it's sort of breaking as it goes along the shore. So I think actually I really liked that effect as well. And another look is just to show you the rocks, and of course, as I said before, this really shouldn't extend out this far, and even this breaker here is not necessarily believable, as this would really diffuse a lot of the energy coming through. But as I said, you know, a lot on my mind as I was trying to work through these, so you know, not a totally garish mistake, but you know, one of those small details I'd like to improve next time. I really liked, however, though, that you can see some of the rocks coming through, and in fact, you can really see this is almost like a little clear, I don't want to call it a grotto, but you know, it's got some nice transparency in here, and I really think that worked out well. One of the problems with this area, however, is first, the foam texture just didn't really come out the way I had hoped. I may be able to fix that in the future. You know, I could touch it up, but I'm going to wait until I do the next board and see how that comes out. And if I do it better there, I'll come back and see if I can match it. But again, I tried to do that foam, you know, underneath the water, washing through it throughout, and I liked that effect overall as well. But saying all of that, I tended to think after I was done that this looks maybe almost a little bit like a river coming through rather than waves breaking. So I think breaking up some of these spots where the waves are crashing and then not crashing, or something to that effect, will add a little bit more interest, a little more realism to this as well. But, you know, I think if I were to grade myself on this, you know, the rocks are an A, the surf is maybe a C, so I'll take a B on it for now and see what I can do next time around, see if I can step it up a notch. And here I want to show you the most disappointing aspect of this board, and the other one as well, and I don't want to say it crushed me, but I will say that I was very, very disappointed, and I may be able to fix it. I'm going to wait until I do the next board and then maybe come back. But you can see that there's this pitting in the surface. Once I had done all of the areas of the board, then I went back in and basically gave it a skim coat of Envirotex to tie everything together, to smooth out these areas. And I think because the coat was so thin that it just didn't fill these areas right. But as I had mentioned in the past, I didn't, you know, in the test boards, I really wanted to avoid, you know, having a strong pooling effect in, actually, let me see if I can come over here. Here we go. You know, I didn't want a pooling effect in between the waves. I wanted to preserve as much detail as possible, and I think I may have compromised the look as a result of that. Saying that, I think I did a pretty good job, however, of making the transition to areas where I had cut the cast and then had to fill that with clear coat to bring it up to level and try to blend that transition. It's much, much better here than in the test board, and I think I can improve that. Boy, that looks like a river, huh? Like, we'll work on that. But the only thing is that there is still a little bit of a color change, which I think you can see here, and it's not that noticeable. It depends on the angle of view, but as I worked back across the board, as I got closer and closer, I realized that I could tint the clear coat and then adjust that tint depending on what the underlying color was, and then I could make it seem even a little bit more seamless in its transition, both in texture and color. So I was sort of making improvements along the way as I worked on this board, and that's why I say, you know, I had a lot to think about. So there are definitely some areas now that I can think about more next go around. But boy, I'm really hoping I can fix that pitting on this surface, because after all this work, after all that effort, to have that surface look like that was really, really disappointing. So we'll see if I can fix it going forward, and hopefully you can wish me well on that, and we'll see how the next pair of boards comes out. So that gives you a look at the ocean boards and where they're at right now. It's been quite a journey to get here, and I like a lot of what's happened on them, but of course, as I mentioned, there are some areas that I'd like to improve, and if you've been following me for a while, you know my type A personality is constantly driving to fix the minutia, but I may have to let some of those things go as I need to get these going forward. So I've done as much research as I think I can on them, and I'll see if I can pick up some of those small improvements as I work on the next pair. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below. If you have a specific question on a technique or something that I've done in the past, of course, you can send that to the TerranScapes@gmail.com, and I'll see if I can shoot a video a little bit down the road. And I think that's it. So thank you once again for joining me. I really appreciate it, and I welcome all the new subscribers, and I will talk to you soon in another TerranScapes video.